Доброго дня. Дякую всім, хто
Good afternoon. Thank you all the visitors. Thank you all the guests.
розкажемо нашим гостям, що ми сьогодні планували обговорити.
Today we planned to have the regulators and the experts to discuss the preparation to heating season. Unfortunately, neither the ministry's representatives, nor the regulator representatives did not manage to attend this event, but it does not matter that it does not mean that we cannot start discussion. There are two things which are very actively discussed today: that Ukraine is 95% ready to the heating season, and the second is that 95% of Kievans do not have hot water supply in their houses. So we decided to have this discussion, what's going on in the utilities sector and what efforts should be taken by the government, by local authorities, by companies in order to be sure that we are ready. That is, we have to check up the degree of readiness and to find out what is not done, but which should be done, and to do it. And I'm very pleased to invite to the microphone Ms. Alyona Babak and the Member of Parliament, then Mr. Then Yevhen Bushma, Director, DTEK, ESCO, and then Ms. Tetiana Boyko from OPORA NGO. Thank you for inviting me here. This shows that you have hope to get some information about readiness to the heating season. I will share with you the information that I have as a Member of Parliament and member of the Energy Committee in the Ukrainian Parliament. First of all, I think that we are not in the best situation today, in very optimistic situation. Actually, this year, like in previous years, we have absolutely unsatisfactory situation with the degree of executed contracts between authorities, local authorities, and the energy companies. And actually, Naftogaz of Ukraine has not signed any contracts about supplies of natural gas with gas supplying companies. As of today, Naftogaz of Ukraine had scanned contracts about gas supplies, had disseminated it with among gas supply companies and without a function to change something in those contracts, and requested the gas supply companies to sign it. But Naftogaz ignores the state provision about privileges and subsidies, and the draft contracts say that if there is any indebtedness in privileges or subsidies, then the enterprise will pay fines. So there is no such things in the contract as the debt of the state to those gas supply companies, while the gas supply companies believe that they should take into account these state areas. While Naftogaz keeps saying that we are, that's not our problem, that you have some debts on behalf of the state. We exist in the market conditions, and while the municipal utility services, they continue to exist in some type of communist regime. When there are debts on behalf of the state, non-payments for supplied gas, for privileges and subsidies, and they are not repaid by the state. So now the top responsible person, the Prime Minister, has to announce, to state loudly that the government has the debts for privileges and subsidies which should be covered to gas supply companies. And having recognized this, they should not allow Naftogaz to request payments from gas supply companies. Thus, or there should be other ways out, but definitely the gas supply companies cannot be responsible for this situation. Actually, potentially this means that those people who pay fully new tariffs for gas supply, for heating, they are subject to non-quality services, because energy supply companies, with all those debts, with all those non-paid subsidies, will not get heating in full amount. Actually, those people who pay full-fledged tariffs, full amount of tariffs, they are hostages in this situation. Maybe Naftogaz should pay, should accrue some fines, but this fine should be imposed on the government, which does not pay to gas supply companies for the subsidies and privileges. Then today we have received information from gas supply companies that the monopolist tries to impose these unfair and discriminative conditions and terms upon them, and the companies cannot put a provision into the contract that if there is a debt from the state, then the no fines and should be accrued. As MPs, we had submitted to the parliament a draft law, and according to our information that by the end of this year, all those indebted subsidies would not be covered to gas supply companies.
Можливити в законодавчій
Registered the draft law not to allow legislatively to accumulate these fines, but this is abnormal. That's without responsibility. You cannot live every year in the situation when the utilities companies live so that they are dependent on someone, and Naftogaz Ukraine lives in sort of market conditions. Thank you. Naftogaz is the state-owned company, and some of the heat supplying companies are private. So the DTEK ESCO company, you are helping those who want to really change the situation in which they are. But in the situation that Alyona described, does anyone really need it? I would like to describe the situation differently, talking about the customer, to what extent the customer, the budgetary sphere, private apartments, different types of companies, are they ready for the beginning of the heating season? Because the situation with the agreements which are not signed, this is the situation which is repeated every year. And we can blame Cabinet of Ministers and Naftogaz, but the problem will continue. Let's look at that from the other side. Are the customers ready? Do they want to get ready to heating season? Because legislatively, all the basic norms and regulations which are needed to implement energy service were passed by our MPs. This year was a period of time when all key legislations were passed. There was a law on commercial accounting, on energy efficiency of the buildings. These laws were passed. So, talking about the consumer, we need to believe in such measures, and the measures are to be implemented. The first step for anyone should be, we need to make energy audit. Then second step, we need to understand what needs to be done to get ready for heating season. And if you don't have your own money, then the market starts living in the sphere of energy service. There are companies which are ready to invest a lot of money to the budgetary sphere, because in the budgetary sphere for overhauls, for construction of schools and kindergartens, they lack funds. And what is the main principle or the main advantage of energy service compared to just regular construction? Energy service is to get savings. Every energy serving company is interested in the results of its activities. So the business is about saving energy resources. And for any consumer, there is a sense. In energy service, it's not just about changing the window frames or doing something else, but they need to implement some measures that would lead to lower invoice. So basically, the first frosts will start in November, December, and it will be like it was last year, the year before, when tariffs are high, consumption is big. We'll be saying that the houses are heating the air because windows are open, but are the consumers ready for the new heating season? Even now, there's time to do something before the heating season started. And this way you will reduce the number of consumed gigacalories, and you will reduce your invoice. Now I would like to give the floor to Tetiana Boyko, OPORA Public Network. You talk to people who are trying to implement new approaches to administering in the communal sphere. And do they succeed with that? I will continue what was said. I don't agree that people are not ready. People have created about 30,000 united household communities, condominiums, and about 94,000 multi-apartment buildings are united to centralized system of heating. more than 100,000. We have about 100,000 of these multi-apartment houses, and 30,000 condominiums were set up. But when we are talking about multi-apartment building, we need to understand that without condominium, we cannot talk about implementing energy efficiency. This is the process that is taking place. It is slow, because only according to the state program, about 1,000 condominiums use these warm credits or heating credits. But our neighbor, if we look at our neighboring countries, Slovakia, Poland, or Baltic states, we're moving faster than they, because we have hundreds and thousands a year, and they had dozens a year. This is not the scale that we need, that Ukraine needs, but this are the success stories, the cases which could be taken. And this way the neighbors will be looking at what others succeeded in, and they will be disseminating such experience. We can talk about the problems of condominiums, because we do have the situation. This is the process, the initiative which comes from the bottom. And when there is the support of the state, of the authorities, then it grows well. But if there's no initiative from the bottom, then unfortunately we cannot say that the situation will improve. The state doesn't care, the local authorities either, but this is the self-regulatory mechanism. When people can get united in their house, in their building, in their municipality, then the process is taking place. And then the authorities arrive and they talk about how they help condominium. But I would like to talk more about more global things than just the problems of condominium. What are the obstacles why we cannot talk about 95% readiness? As Alyona said, that's technical readiness, but it's not organizational type or strategic type readiness. Let's take the first indicator, that's accounting of heating. The data of the Ministry of Region are different. According to them, about 70.5% of buildings have the equipment for heat accounting, but according to the National Commission, it's 66%. We mean that 44% of buildings, or 34% of buildings cannot pay according to what they consume realistically. Until now, they are paying, and they will be paying according to Soviet times norms. But the National Commission promised that without the law, this season will be started with 95% of accounting. But talking about what's happening now, this indicator is not what is close to ideal readiness to heating season. Neither people nor authorities can see how much heat is realistically consumed. Then we see, and unfortunately there's no representative of the National Commission. Everyone knows about losses of heat in multi-storied buildings and multi-apartment buildings. 40–50% of heat is lost because the buildings are not modernized, but I would like to talk about losses in the network. OPORA sent the request to the national regulator, and based on all the reports, 250 license holders, we received the information on 250 license holders. We did not receive full data on 80 of them, but we don't have 34%. The norms show twice more than the accounting equipment. When we put together all the data, we realized that the actual losses are 16%, losses in the network. Our planned losses are 90% and actual are 16%. If we add 2%, I said not 90%, but 16%. You said 90%. The planned 12, planned at 12%. I mean, if you add the 2% of heat used for own purposes, then you will see that only 80% of heating gets to the consumer. The heat that was generated, this system cannot be called effective. And 34% are without accounting.
Є не зовсім нормальною.
This situation is not normal, and it means that the companies need money to do modernization, and this modernization cannot be within the system of tariff creation. The national regulator offered the system of stimulating tariffication, and I would like to listen to them, what is their idea about the transfer, because the National Commission will regulate few license holders. Most of the companies will be regulated by local authorities or local bodies.
On the web for the system of stimulating medication, and I would like to look.
And we do not understand how these companies will attract money to conduct their modernization. What's the main thing? The companies should have long-term investment program, because the money that they get via tariffs is not enough, and for that huge investments are needed. And Alyona knows more about that. And this issue, just like about signing agreements before the heating season, these things will not address the whole situation. But the money for subsidies, the funds for subsidies were calculated not correctly, and the companies didn't have money because the money was not returned from the state budget starting from January. And during this time, the company did nothing to install meters and to modernize networks. Where the local authorities helped, the situation was changing. Where there was no help, the situation is very sad. And with 75% of depreciation of the network, I do not know how can we talk about readiness for the heating season. And also, why we don't have the representatives of the authorities here is because of the price for gas. The government said that the price will be not changed for communal services. There is the regulation of the Cabinet of Ministers 187, but there is also the but the agreements which are sent, they don't have the price for gas. And according to Resolution 187, which is still effective, maybe there will be some amendments to it, but now there are no amendments. The price, according to the formula, from the 1st of October, should be increased by 19%. And if the price for gas goes up, automatically that would mean that the price for population will go up.
Вартість залежить від витрат на газ. І, власне, це
And this is what no one's talking about. The Prime Minister politically promises that the price for gas will not go up, but we have documents certifying a different situation. And basically,
So then this should be reflected in the draft contracts, and thus the situation will be resolved. My question to Ms. Alyona and to Yevhen: how can we get ready to the heating season not knowing the gas price? Of course, both consumers and supplying companies should know the gas price in order to imagine whether the service in general will be affordable. As a representative not of the parliamentary committee but as a Samopomich faction, I would like to say that in summer we calculated the gas price which should be in our heating bills. And we submitted parliamentary request to the minister to explain what will be the price, what will be gas price, to comply with the cabinet resolution number 187. So in the ministry's response, it was stated that the gas price will be changed, but that they plan to offer the cabinet to change the date when the gas prices will be changed, and to put August next year as a deadline. They believe that 13.9 cubic meters of domestic gas production will be needed, and around 7 billion cubic meters will be purchased in summer. And this procurement of gas usually is made in summer when the price is lower, and that the ministry plans to put this cheaper gas price into the heating cost calculation. Unfortunately, as of now, there is mid of September, we cannot see any calculations of gas price. We do not see any cheaper prices for gas. We cannot imagine whether gas will be more expensive, less expensive, whether there will be 10% difference between imported gas and domestically produced gas or not. Thus, we still remain in uncertainty. But as of early July, the difference between domestic and imported gas was something like 17–19%. That's why, with all this confusing information, today I will again send a letter to the minister and request from him an answer to me as a member of parliament. What will be the gas price and what gas price will be taken into account in the heating supply formula. Thus, we have almost 14 billion of domestically produced gas, while a little bit less than 4 billion cubic meters should be bought from abroad. Why we should base our heating calculation formula on the imported gas? At the same time, there is huge number of people who apply and who get subsidies for heating. In Kiev, it's only 25%. In Kamianets, something like 60%. In centers of regions, this figure amounts to 50%. While this situation should be continued and multiplied. Why do we equal the domestically produced gas price with the imported gas price? Thus, we create extra income in extra revenues for NAK Naftogaz. But many people cannot pay this money. I do not think that the government has to support the ideas of IMF. It should take into account lower gas price, domestically produced gas, and base its formula on it. But we try to create market prices. Yes, we should look at the market. If look at the supply and demand. If demand says that people are poor and they cannot afford our gas, then our market has to respond to this insolvent demand or poor solvent demand. The question to you about prices, about technical readiness. Let us look at this situation from the company's point of view. Any CEO has to plan the budget, how much money is needed for heating, for future expenses, and unfortunately, in today's situation, many CEOs are unable to understand how much they will pay for heating this season. And any CEO who is planning expenses in an enterprise, irrespectively whether this is budget enterprise or commercial company, they of course should try to save on heating. And after my communication with many local authorities, I got an impression that they all are thinking how to save money on heating. For example, one of mayors of small town told me that they spend 20 million hryvnia for gas only for this small town to heat it in winter, and they are thinking how to decrease consumption and what shouldn't, what could be done. People in multi-storied buildings, in flats in multi-storied buildings, they started to think what could be done. And enterprises and companies should also think how to save money. Now questions, please raise your hands and you will get the mic to ask question. Natalka Prutka, Glavcom publication about gas price. This is very disputable issue. Gas price is equals to gas production plus delivery plus some income, and gas production is several times lower in Ukraine than European hub price. Okay, so we have put this European hub gas price into our formula, but the government had not published it, and the government continues to discuss whether the hub price plus delivery or the hub price minus delivery should be a rate for gas price for Ukraine, because they still continue discussion whether the gas price is set by the government. If there is a European hub minus delivery, then this conflicts with Ukrainian commitments to IMF. And now we have to decrease the gas price. I would like to repeat that in that official response from Minister Nasalek that I received, he informed me that they were going to approach to the government with the request to change 1st July to 1st August for calculation of price, because this allows to put cheaper price into formula. And this will allow to put more objective figures into formula, and this will allow us to not to raise heating bills. If you have different information, then lucky you are, but I do not have any other information from the minister. I would like to add that as of today, active resolution number 187 sets hub plus cost of calculation. I'm not competent to discuss what may happen if Ukraine wins in the Stockholm arbitration about gas prices, but as of today on Ministry of Energy website you can see draft changes to the formula, but this is about coefficient 1.6, which is used for budget enterprises, and suggests to cancel this coefficient for them. Any further questions? Natalia Baguta, Деньги magazine. Ms. Alyona, you mentioned that Ministry of Construction provided any response about areas for subsidies this year, and probably you already know that even those 14 billion which were added by special draft law to the budget to be spent on subsidies will not be enough. Whether there is any estimation what indebtedness in subsidies could be this year, and how much this will mean losses for heating supply companies. Yes, you are right. what you mentioned was stated as indebtedness of the state for non-paid, for non-compensated subsidies to heating supply companies, and there was a special draft law on this issue. But the ministry again stated that we should write down another date in the draft law because they do not believe that budget areas will be covered this year. That is, the ministry already is sure that there will be areas for not paid subsidies by the state to gas supply companies. By the end of this year, this won't be paid to them, so they have to restructure this indebtedness. Thank you, everybody who managed to attend this event. Thank you for this rather sad but very much needed discussion of the situation. We still wait for those people who are responsible, and we hope to see representatives from Ministry of the Regions to ask them the questions.